Hi, welcome to my pitch presentation. I'm Deborah Park, I'm a ninth grader, and my topic is all about fast fashion. Do you shop at H&M, Zara, Forever 21? Those places have amazing, fashionable, trendy clothes, but what we fail to realize is that many of the clothes that are sold at these stores negatively impact our environment. So my driving question is how can the community of Santa Ana work to reduce the negative environmental impact of fast fashion? So I'd love for you to give me feedback as I go over some of the aspects of my research project. First, I'll go over my literature review. As a freshman, I was required to find 5 or more articles, so I found articles from scholarly journal resources. I found 6 articles that helped me shape my research. The first article I found was by Halsey and Akinga from 2018 from the journal Environmental Health. The title of the article is The Global Environmental Injustice of Fast Fashion. And so I included my main idea there. Trade policies and regulations are the best solutions for reducing the negative environmental impact of fast fashion. So in this article, it goes over how different policies need to be put forth by governments and local communities and business people in order to reduce the environmental impact of fast fashion. The second article I found was published in 2017, and it's called Waste Couture, and it was written by Claudio, and the title is Environmental Impact of the Clothing Industry. And the main idea of this article is that fast fashion contributes to pollution, occupational hazards, especially when manufacturing man-made or synthetic fibers like polyester that lead to respiratory and medical diseases, and also how fast fashion also contributes to volatile wastewater, so toxic water in our water supply that affects crops and people's health. And fast fashion also contributes to 1/4 of all pesticides that are sprayed in the United States of America, according to the USDA. So, all in all, fast fashion negatively impacts the environment. A third article I found was called 7 Ways to Break the Fast Fashion Habit. And it was published by the World Economic Forum in 2019. And so in this article, the main idea is that in order to reduce the negative environmental impact of fast fashion, there are 7 things we can do as consumers. We can buy less and wear more, so we can rewear a lot of our clothing. We can read the label better. We can vote by making decisions in terms of which stores we actually go to buy clothing. We can shop for charity. We can choose organic cotton over synthetic fibers, or we can rent or borrow clothing. And lastly, we can be mindful of washing. So washing our clothes less will actually help improve the environment. So these are 7 of the things that this article explored. And the researchers of this article also posted this really interesting graph here, which shows that in the next 10 years, by 2030, the amount of clothing that we purchase is going to go up by 2 times. So it's going to go double in the next 10 years. However, the amount of times we wear clothing is going to decrease significantly. So we're going to have more clothes and we're going to buy more clothes, so that goes up, while at the same time, the number of times we wear clothing items will decrease. So instead of wearing a pair of jeans, a couple or 3 or 4 times a week, we'll be wearing it maybe once or less per week. So it basically reduces the wearability of each clothing item. All right, for my 4th article, it was by the journal called Family and Consumer Sciences Research Journal, and this was published in 2016. And the title of this article is Clothing Swaps, an Exploration of Consumer Clothing Exchange Behaviors. I thought this article is really interesting because it created in me like an idea for a clothing swap, which I didn't really know a lot of. But I learned that clothing swaps actually benefit people. There's 3 main themes: giving, receiving, and socializing, and how clothing swaps can not only impact the environment in a positive way, but it can also help people with their social lives as well. So it has like a social aspect to it. Next, another article I found was called Life Cycle Assessment of Clothing Libraries. Can collaborative consumption reduce the environmental impact of fast fashion? So I thought this was a really interesting article because I know that currently there are a lot of really great renting services where people can rent dresses from like Rent the Runway. People can rent wardrobes from different websites and use them for 3 months or less, and then return the clothing and borrow new clothing. So instead of having clothing sit in their closet that's unworn, they're basically sharing clothing with basically the nation through social media, through apps, and through swapping culture. Some of these are subscription based, like paying $80 a month to get access to a wardrobe of your favorite brands, and some are more subscription based, like where you pay $39.99 a month and a stylist will deliver clothes to you through a box, and then you'll change it out. So this article was really interesting because it goes over clothing libraries, but it also critically looks at how sometimes these clothing libraries, when they have delivery services and transportation, that might actually offset the environmental benefits. So it's a really interesting article that looks at the pros and cons. And lastly, I found an article where researchers in Finland looked into clothing swaps and clothing businesses where they create subscription services and things like that that I just mentioned earlier, and how these have very positive effects and are more linked with younger consumers. So it helped me understand in my driving question that we may be able to work on the problems or the challenges of fast fashion through the younger generation, like me, teenagers and high school students, college students in our community. So to give you a little bit of an example of those clothing swap or subscription services that exist today, here are two examples. There's the Gwynnie Bee website, and there's also Le Tote and also Stitch Fix. These are just three examples of dozens of subscription services, swap services, and also rental services for clothing that are an alternative to going to Forever 21, H&M, or Zara and purchasing a piece of clothing for very cheap, but that negatively impacted the environment. Now for my next part, I'd like to show you my proposal outline. So as a freshman, I am going to be writing a proposal to the City Council of Santa Ana. So these are going to be the parts of my proposal. I'm going to include a cover letter, I'm going to include a summary introduction, a problem statement, my objectives of why I want to propose this idea, my description of my project, which is going to be an event that I want to coordinate, an evaluation of how it's going to impact the community, what kinds of funds and licenses I need, and references to all of my articles that I found that helped me shape my design, and also a letter of support. So I'm going to include all of these in my paper. And here is what I propose. So I am proposing that the City of Santa Ana, or the City Council, provides funding as well as a permit for me and my friends to host a community-wide clothing swap that invites all of our neighbors, community members, businesses, especially local thrift shops and vintage shops, as well as the Salvation Army, as well as the Goodwill and other places to come into our community and have this community-wide event where people can bring the clothing that they don't wear and swap it for clothing they want to wear. And so I think that this would be a really positive event, and it would be done 4 times a year each season, so people can kind of refresh their wardrobes without having an environmental impact, without having to purchase new clothing from fast fashion brands, which, as I mentioned through my research, negatively impacts the environment. So here is the impact to our community. By doing the clothing swap, I hope that Santa Ana residents will become more aware of their clothing choices and their consumer decisions and their purchasing power. I want to empower Santa Ana residents to know that they can do something about it, because at the end of the day, fast fashion will impact our environment through our water quality, through our air pollution quality, the pesticides that are in our air, respiratory illnesses, and so many other ways. So let me give you some examples of the proposed idea or the event that I would love to host in our city of Santa Ana. These are some examples of clothing swaps that have already happened across our country and in different parts of the world. These are some flyers from clothing swaps that were successful. And next, for my student-led research, I'm going to be doing a survey of 100 residents of Santa Ana. I want to find what their purchasing and consumer behaviors are. I want to know if people know what fast fashion is, if people even think about if people even think about the environmental impact of their fashion choices when making decisions. The findings from this survey will help me, because it'll give me justification for why we need a clothing swap in our city and why it's important for residents of Santa Ana to be more aware and educated about the negative impacts of fast fashion. And so my survey, I have a link to it here. And in my survey, I wanted to keep it very simple so that it's easy for people to complete. So here's my fast fashion survey. My first question is, do you know what fast fashion is? Very simple and clear. I would like for people to tell me, because I feel like I'm hypothesizing that a lot of people don't know what fast fashion is. And then the next few questions really go into people's motivation for buying clothing and what goes into their decision making. So, for example, when you purchase clothing at stores, what are some factors that influence your decision to purchase the clothing item? So, I included things like price, quality, trends, environmental impact, need, fabric, or material type. And then of those, the next question is, what is the most important factor in deciding to buy a piece of clothing? And the question after that is, what is the least important factor? The sixth question is if consumers are interested in attending a community swap event. And then I also ask them about their demographic information, such as age group. I'd like to tell you what I would hope to learn through this experience. So I chose two Circulose competencies. They are read critically and collaborate on teams. I have personally struggled with reading difficult text. A lot of the articles I found were really difficult for me. So I hope that through this project, I can improve my skills on how to read really difficult articles. And I also hope to learn how to work in teams, because it's sometimes hard for me to work with my partner. And so I want to become a better partner person and know how to put roles and responsibilities with each other. And then also, for my 3 content standards, for ELA, for writing, I want to be able to write an entire research proposal. So that is W.11 to 12.7. And then for my C3 frameworks for social studies, this one is about determining the kinds of sources. So it was a lot of work to find different scholarly journal articles, and I feel like I really improved and progressed in this standard, because I had to figure out which articles I couldn't use and which articles I should use. And I wasn't really aware of all of those journal studies out there, but as I got the hang of it, it became a lot easier, and I feel more confident in my ability to do that. Next is a Common Core standard for math. There's a lot of statistics as shown through the graph, and so I hope that I can use graphs and statistics, and then use my survey data and create pie charts and graphs as well to represent my information and my findings in a mathematical way. All right, and finally, for my creative component, I would like to create a 90-second stop motion film that is a public service announcement, like a commercial, making people aware in Santa Ana about what fast fashion does to our environment, and also publicizing our fast fashion clothing swap in our community that I would be proposing to the city council. And then to give you an example of a stop motion film, I linked one here. This one is a person who actually cut out illustrations on construction paper and used also cutouts of magazine images and moved it for every frame for a really quick video. So even though it's a 90-second video, it would probably take at least like 1,000 pictures to make a 90-second film, so this is going to be a big undertaking. And the reason why I want to do it is because I think telling stories visually is very powerful. And I feel like a 90-second video is almost like a commercial that lets people know about the impact of their fashion choices on our environment, but also empowers them to know that if they make the right choices, like making the longevity of their clothing longer, then they can actually help the environment. So thank you so much for listening to my presentation, my pitch. I hope that you can give me some great feedback so that I can improve on my process and make a better research project. Thank you. Hi students. All right, I have a couple of things I definitely want to talk about. As you noticed on the slides for the literature review, everything in red were the big main ideas, like basically a 1-sentence summary of what the article is about. And then underneath that, I put a citation in MLA format of the scholarly source. Now remember, scholarly sources are sources from researchers, universities, and .edu or journal articles. Please do not have all of these sources just from newspaper articles. Not all .orgs are actually scholarly sources. So I've been looking at some of your article tags, and I noticed a lot of you guys don't have scholarly journal articles. If you need help finding a scholarly journal article, you can ask me or any of your teachers. So you must have at least a couple scholarly journal articles there. Those are journals like the Journal of Environmental Health or the Journal of Psychological Sciences or something, right? So you must have scholarly articles. Something else I noticed is that I said a lot in my presentation. So if I was giving feedback, I would tell myself, stop saying and also stop looking at the paper so much. So to be honest, I didn't prepare too much for my presentation. I hope you guys prepare a lot more. Plus, you're going to be with your group members, so you guys can kind of help each other out. You'll also be able to have note cards with you, so don't worry if you don't have every single thing memorized, but try not to be like me and don't look at your paper all the time. You can also notice that I added an example of my survey. I linked it. I would highly recommend you do that too. So if you're doing an interview, I would highly recommend you either print out your interview questions and who you plan on interviewing, or have a doc open with those interview questions. I also think you should do that for your survey. So if you're going to do Google Forms, you should have your Google Form survey all done and checked by your teacher, so you can link that, because it's really great to get feedback on your survey questions. That's part of one of the things that are really difficult to do. And I'll make a video on the student-led research component very soon. And finally, I think it's super important that you guys actually check out my slides, because on the video it's kind of hard to see on the TV. So I'm going to link my slides below, and I'll also link the slides in bit.ly/PBL1920, our shared Google folder, as well as on the Canvas course under the pitch presentation file page. So I hope you guys are successful. I know a few of you guys have already signed up for your pitch presentations. Please make sure you sign up as soon as possible. Otherwise, I will sign you up for you. All right? Thank you very much, and I'll talk to you guys later.